Are you ready? Let's go!
Don't you sometimes just want to talk about everything? You know, there's days when you can just talk about anything. Need to sit back and chat about nothing at all? Nothing But Julie, coming at you with fun and creative topics and interviews.
Did you hear Julie's podcast? She's got the greatest topics.
Come join the chat about everything, anything, and nothing. So unwind and tune in to Nothing But Julie. Great topics and cool interviews with some pretty awesome people. And now, without further delay, here's Nothing But Julie.
This is one of a 3-part series on Is It Me? Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for joining me. This is Julie Schrager, your podcast host of Nothing But Julie. I am, just to let you know, thinking of perhaps changing or tweaking the name of my podcast. It is something that I do have a passion for. I have been crazy busy and have not been able to give it as much time as I want to. And my apologies. And I'm hopefully getting back on board with it. I'm going to take some time out of my busy life, and I'm going to pre-record many episodes so I can automatically upload them. But I don't know. Maybe you can send me some of your suggestions. You're always so awesome in sending me DMs on my Instagram. And also don't forget that I have TikTok, Nothing But Julie. Some silly stuff. But I'm thinking of tweaking the name, but I don't know to what. So if you can think of something, that would be great. Is it me? What do you think? Is it me? Or are friendships harder to maintain as adults? It seemed so much easier when I was younger to make friends. Maybe my standards weren't as high. And by high, I mean I've lived long enough to know what I need, what I require, and what a good friend's definition for me is. It's interesting to find out others' definitions of friendship. I always hear quality over quantity, yet many of those people that do say that statement have many, many friends, and I don't believe for 1 minute that all of those friends are of quality. I've noticed that the default planner has become a steady and usual quote unquote ghosting and growing apart. I often wonder why people do that and what it might mean to some other people besides the one that's doing it. See, ghosting is when someone suddenly cuts off all communication with another person without an explanation. No texts, no calls, no closure. It's like they vanish into thin air. And it often leaves the person on the receiving end feeling confused, hurt and doubting themselves. It usually is less about you and more about them. But that is not easily admittable to the ones who are ghosting you, to them, to those people. In their eyes, they're doing it because of this, that, and the other thing about you. But many of them will succumb to the idea and realize that it really is them. And sometimes you are in that helpless loop of the people doing that who are not mature enough or cannot handle certain situations or have the maturity that you might have at that particular time. I think that the reason why people ghost others is to avoid confrontation. It's so much easier to avoid confrontation rather than have a confrontation. And confrontations don't need to be horrible. They can be nerve-wracking, but when you state things in a particular way, and if you are not passive-aggressive, but you are honest and kind and gentle, and the other person, the person on the receiving end, is willing to not be incredibly sensitive to what you might be saying, and they're willing to listen and take some criticism and maybe want the friendship so bad and not let it go so quickly and get defensive. And that is the unfortunate case with many people. They, especially in this world, have become incredibly defensive. Everybody's walking on eggshells and everyone's ready to fight. I think that the avoiding confrontation part is a huge piece of that puzzle. They don't want to have an uncomfortable conversation, so they disappear instead. Sometimes it's the loss of interest. Rather than express it honestly, they retreat and hope that you get the message. And I also think that it might possibly be a feeling of being overwhelmed. There are many emotionally unavailable people in this world, and they often shut down rather than deal with complex feelings. And I also think that many don't see it as serious. Especially in casual relationships, they may not think that they owe you anything. And also the one that you might not want to hear, that they were never fully invested. Some people, they'll breadcrumb, they'll send occasional signs of interest, and then they'll ghost when it stops benefiting them. I would call them opportunists. I've come across many opportunists, and it took me a while to start noticing the red flags of those opportunists. There is a significant impact with ghosting. It can create an emotional whiplash. You go from daily conversations to complete radio silence. I think that is a very emotionally unstable way of handling anything in your life. That, to me, is a word a lot of people don't like, but it's very cowardly. But unfortunately, this is how some people are. I think ghosting, the impact of ghosting is also that it triggers self-doubt. You start thinking, was it something I said or something I did? You start questioning everything. You start backtracking to something that might have happened a week ago. And, is it because of this? Or when it might not have anything to do, really, with you. One thing that I really need in my life is closure. I don't like an open book. I don't like an open-ended situation. Even if it's not the closure I'm looking for, but it will still suit me. I still need that. And it feels like a loss without closure, which can actually mimic grief. I think what ghosting often says, like on a psychological basis, is that the ghoster may struggle with their own emotional maturity, with their own lack of communication or even empathy. It can reflect a fear of, let's say, vulnerability or avoidant attachment styles, which is something I did read about, or just poor conflict resolution skills. Not everybody is born with these skills. Not everybody learns coping mechanisms. And not everybody thinks that they're the problem. They just keep getting more and more upset and more angry, more bitter, more sensitive. And they never see ever that they're the ones with this particular issue that might require some help I think that for people who are ghosted, like I've been in the past, it has surfaced old wounds of rejection or abandonment. Not that I had a lot of that in my life, but I was actually very, for lack of a better word, happy in the end when I was ghosted, because it was a huge learning experience. It it pushed me into really analyzing myself and why I would feel the way I felt. And could it have been rejection? Could it have been abandonment? Could it have been something else that might have happened to me in my younger years that is sparking a subconscious feeling and I can't figure it out? The question about ghosting is it ever justified? Sometimes, for example, if someone is behaving emotionally manipulative, aggressive, or even unsafe, ghosting might be a form of self-protection. There are certain dynamics, like in a toxic dynamic, where a clean break can be healthier sometimes than this long, drawn-out goodbye. I'd like to also discuss spiraling. Have you ever spiraled after being ghosted? And that feeling? I know that feeling. Again, this is not something I'm just reading about. This is something that I experienced. I mean, I think ghosting and spiraling go hand in hand, especially when you're on the receiving end. I think that the initial reaction when being ghosted is you're confused. You know, and you're checking your phone, you're checking your social media, and you reread the last few messages like you're a detective, and then the spiraling begins. You overanalyze everything. You say things like, "Did I do something wrong?" Like I said before, did I say something wrong? And then you start to make excuses like, maybe their phone's broken, or I don't know, maybe they're just really busy. It's almost like the steps of grief. Not that it is grief. I'm just talking about the steps that we take with grief. Ghosting is similar to that. We go into different details as the length of the ghosting continues, like blaming yourself. You know, you assume it's something that you did wrong, or that maybe you weren't worth a goodbye, or you take a dip with self-worth. I think that ghosting is a horrible thing that people do, but you need to be protected and you need to find out what is the best coping mechanism that you can take away from it. And label ghosting and spiraling for what it is. You know, ghosting is a reflection of your friend's lack of emotional maturity, not your worth. And don't chase the silence. If they wanted to talk, they would. Do not beg for closure, because they might not even be equipped to give you that. They most likely aren't, because they've ghosted you. You know, get out of your head and talk to someone that you trust, someone other than the husband, or, you know, someone that you do trust that can often break this spiral. You have to disrupt the mental loop. Sometimes going on a walk, writing things down, even deleting a chat thread can be the one thing that can help break that spiral. Or even reframe the story. You know, instead of saying I got ghosted, try saying I'm learning who's emotionally unavailable faster. That's something that I think could really benefit you. I really do. But ghosting was not just, you know, the only thing that I wanted to talk about. There are also mirror moments. You know, times when you might reflect and look honestly at that situation, dissect it, and ask yourself over and over and over if you were the one that did it. And you can't. You just can't. It's not worth it at all. So let's move on to, is it me? I think that there are many other avenues to take instead of always thinking, that it's yourself. I like to explore the gray areas of everyday life. I am a very black and white person, but I love exploring the gray areas, relationships, work, family, identity, friendships, and especially personal growth. Just looking through the lens of self-reflection and that's thinking that sometimes I am the problem. I think that when we take a deep dive into ourselves, there was an episode on Sex and the City, and as many of you know, I am a diehard fan. And Sex and the City, when Sarah Jessica Parker's character Carrie started to go to a therapist, and she bumped into, I don't remember the name, but it was John Bon Jovi, and he played a particular character. And they slept together, and Carrie posed the question to him, so why is it that you're seeing the therapist? And he told her why. He said, oh, what did he say? Oh, I can't remember. But it was so good. But he then asks her, and she said, I attract the wrong men. I think it was that he's emotionally unavailable to people. And then she says that. And you know what? Maybe you do attract emotionally unavailable people. Do you know what I mean? What makes you think that maybe you don't have an issue with attracting emotionally unavailable people? I don't think that many people realize that. There are certain things that you might have encountered in your life that might have created you to become an emotionally unavailable person. Because you can attract these people because of your past without realizing it. So what does it really mean when we say emotionally unavailable? I mean, what does it even mean? Well, let's break it down. It is someone who is emotionally unavailable. And they struggle basically to connect on a deeper level. Not because they don't want a connection, but because they're scared of the vulnerability it takes to maintain it. And this is where the red flags come in. Emotionally unavailable people avoid talking about their feelings. And there's inconsistency. One day they're into you, the next day they pull away. Many disappear when things get real, like ghosting. Sometimes they will joke through a serious conversation. Maybe, and I know that you know this one, they're busy all the time, especially when you need them the most. They're charming, yet they're guarded. And they're good at getting your attention, but bad at holding it. But what are some signs that you might be emotionally unavailable? Well, some are that you can chase people who won't commit. Or you get uncomfortable when someone wants to get too close. Maybe you sabotage relationships when they're going well. Sometimes you could be trying to heal people. I'm a healer. But should you be doing that? Or should you be choosing someone who's already healthy? What makes someone be drawn to an unavailable person? Well, it could be familiarity. I mean, they feel like someone from your past, like, hello, wounded inner child. The chase maybe is addictive. It feels exciting because it's unpredictable. Or maybe you think that if you can unlock them, it means you're worthy. So let's talk about how to break this pattern. Well, first of all, you have to recognize the difference between chemistry and compatibility. Ask early. How do you handle conversations? I mean, if you're doing all the emotional heavy lifting, you're in a one-sided relationship. Learn to sit with the boring, stable, consistent love, because that is the real stuff. I think that if you keep choosing emotionally unavailable people, it could be more of a detriment to your life because you're always going to be unhappy. Well, what if it's you learning what real intimacy looks like? What if you do that and you start with being emotionally available to yourself? You can do that. Maybe you need to speak with someone. Maybe you need to do a bit of a reset or an update on your mental health. What do you think? Have you at all agreed with anything I've said about how you have been or how you've been with others? It would be interesting for you to take the time and really think about some of the things I said, because it is a very compelling discussion. I think that when you send 12 texts in a row, and someone's not getting back to you, dive into it. I mean, are you too much friend? What do you think about that? I mean, you can also ask yourself other questions like, am I actually afraid of being happy? I think that the too much friend part is that it really hits at the heart of identity and rejection, belonging, and how we show up in relationships, especially for people who are expressive and loyal and deeply emotional. I think that you can say things like, do I talk too much? Do I care too hard? Do I text too often? Am I too sensitive, too intense, too needy? Is it me? Am I the friend people love in small doses and ghost when it gets real? I think that we all need to take a moment and dissect who we are and think more about not just it's them, it's not me, because that's what most friends say to you or a sibling or a parent. They will say to you, oh, it's them, it's not you. And sometimes it's true, and sometimes they're just saying it to make you feel better. But what if it is you? There is absolutely nothing wrong with you diving into that and trying to figure out if it's you, but not at the cost of your mental health. And what I mean by that is not everything is your fault. Not everything is you. That's why it's great to always have a mental health checkup. And to also be brave enough to accept constructive criticism. And don't look at it as a negative thing. Look at it as a positive thing. If I'm at work and someone comes up to me and says, Julie, you really could have done that better. Versus someone that comes up to me and says, I understand how hard you worked on this. Could I take a few minutes and go over some of the points with you? You see, it's they're both the same thing, but the approach and the verbiage from the first one is insulting. It directly insults the work that you did. But if someone approaches you with more ease and kindness and gentleness, you will accept that constructive criticism. And I have in my life and throughout my life. I have a friend who was a part of a group chat years ago, and it was about going away somewhere. And the person who created the group chat did not include me. So I got upset with my friend who I found out was a part of the chat. How come you didn't invite me to the chat? And then I realized that's not her problem. And I was going on and on about how upset I was, blah, blah, blah. And she said, very frankly, very matter of fact, ask her, whatever her name is, Joan. Ask Joan in the text. And for a moment, I was like, oh, screw you. But then I thought, she's right. That was someone putting me in my place, or to make it sound better, didn't want to partake in the conversation and thought that it was best for me to contact the other person who created the chat. There are some people that just can't even handle that tone. There are some people who will find an objection to no matter how you phrase something. But there's nothing wrong with constructive criticism. As a matter of fact, I think constructive criticism done the right way can lead you into having a realization about those particular things and how maybe you can work on them. There's nothing wrong with improving yourself, and there's nothing wrong with the people who want to help you improve on those things. So why not just take it as, I was going to say an olive branch, but that's the wrong verbiage, and I can't think of the word I'm trying to think of, but don't take offense to it. Take it as this person cares enough about me to point out to me some of the things I could maybe do. And you know what? Or do better. And then in the end, you could take that as a positive reflection, because now you have learned how to change that now might help you in the future for future projects. So why not take it and don't get so upset. So this is going to be a 3-part series, and like I said at the beginning, and I am hoping that you join me on this amazing journey of self-help, emotional help, mental health, however you want to put it. There are some things that we can do to really help ourselves. No matter how big, no matter how small, we're always on a journey of self-help, trying to improve and trying to do the right thing and just live a happier, prosperous life. So, I hope you join me next week.